Questions to the Prime Minister. Question number 1, Mr. Peter Archer.
Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others, including one with the Prime Minister of New Zealand. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall be having further meetings later today.
Mr. Archer.
Who said that?
Has the right honourable gentleman found time to consider which of the policies in which he's participated over the last 11 years he now regrets and proposes to change? If the answer is that the major revolution amounts to no more than requiring backseat drivers to belt up, what what benefit has the public received in exchange for the expensive telephone bills incurred by government departments over the course of the last month's plotting?
I can tell the right honourable gentleman one thing. There is one backseat injunction I won't follow. I won't turn left.
James Pace. Number two.
Mr. Speaker, I refer my honourable friend to the reply I gave some moments ago.
Mr. James Pace.
Mr. Speaker, has my right honourable friend seen this morning's press tribute to his and my county of Cambridgeshire for the way that they have given as much management control to schools as if those schools had adopted grant-maintained status? Will he compare that to the proposal to introduce new politically appointed bureaucracies which might well be aiming high, but which would inevitably lower standards to that of the lowest standards achievable, which is just what we expect of all Labour Party policies?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. Yes, I did see the statement this morning, and of course Cambridgeshire County Council have been innovators in education for a considerable period of time, and I'm delighted to see what they're now doing. I do agree with my honourable friend that expensive bureaucratic control of education would only withdraw resources from the classroom, whereas our policies is to ensure that resources remain in the classroom.
Neil Kinnock.
Mr. Speaker.
Order. Mr. Kinnock.
Mr. Speaker, the right honourable gentleman has been good enough to refer to the personal debt of gratitude he has to the National Health Service. Doesn't he think it would be right to discharge that debt now by getting rid altogether of hospital opt-out?
Self-government within the National Health Service will improve management, and that, I think, is the reason why so many hospitals are seeking to do it. In the last 10 years, more resources have been added to the National Health Service than anyone could imagine. There will be no doubt in the future that the National Health Service will be in the centre of our concerns.
Mr. Kinnock.
Clearly, Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister means to make no change for the better in the National Health Service. Isn't he aware that wherever any ballot is being held, consultants, hospital doctors, nurses, general practitioners, the general public have voted by huge majorities against opting out? Doesn't he realise that opt-out will intensify the crisis in the National Health Service? And since the National Health Service has never done anything but good for him, why is he doing it so much harm?
Unlike some members opposite, I unfailingly use the National Health Service. And insofar as the future of the National Health Service is concerned, the National Health Service's future is entirely secure with increased funding, as it has been over the last 10 years, and as I have no doubt it will continue to be.
Then, Mr. Speaker, could the right honourable gentleman make a start with that case on convincing his own constituents about the Hinchingbrook Hospital in his constituency? where waiting lists have doubled in the last 2 years, and where the local press describes a wall of opposition against opting out. Is he going to support his constituents?
Self-government.
Order!
Self-government is being proposed by the consultants and staff in the Hinchingbrook Hospital, which has the most enormous affection of all the people in the area. And I will tell the right honourable gentleman one further thing about Hinchingbrook Hospital. It was never available under a Labour government. It was this government that provided it.
Mr. Higgins!
May I congratulate my right honourable friend on becoming Prime Minister and on the speech which he made earlier today, which seemed to me to embody the spirit of the late Ian MacLeod. But in that context and in that spirit, may I ask him to give urgent consideration to two particular injustices: the position of those haemophiliacs who have suffered from AIDS as a result of the blood products provided by the National Health Service, and also those who suffered as a result of being exposed to radiation following atomic tests immediately after World War II. I don't expect him to give an answer off the top of his head. That would be unfashionable. But could he give it very urgent consideration?
Mr. Speaker, as my right honourable friend knows, I do like to consider matters before reaching a conclusion, but I will certainly accept his injunction and do so.
Mr. Ashton!
Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister gave his right honourable friend, the member for Henley, what we now understand was carte blanche for a fundamental review of the poll tax. Did he rule out the option of abolishing it?
My right honourable friend, the member for Henley, and I will be discussing the precise remit for the consideration later on today.
Mr. Patrick Nichols!
Mr. Speaker, has my right honourable friend had a chance to consider the latest computer analysis from the IOD on the top-performing companies in Europe? Has he noted, in fact, that there are more UK companies in the top 100 than Germany or France? And doesn't that say far more for the underlying strength of the British economy than the sort of economic illiteracy we hear from the Leader of the Opposition?
My honourable friend is entirely right. There is absolutely no doubt about the revolution in prospects for this country throughout the last decade.
Dennis Skinner!
I have no present plans to do so.
Mr. Skinner!
When the Prime Minister does finally get round to going to Henley and perhaps have a rubber chicken dinner with his right honourable friend, will he tell the voters of Henley why it is that he's managed to offend the Welsh, the blacks and other people during the first 7 days, including the women? And will he tell them that this is the way that he intends to start building his classless society?
I think his honourable friend was writing down for him the question he intended to ask, not the question that he did ask. Insofar as the remarks he has made presumably relate to Mr. Taylor, the prospective Conservative candidate in Cheltenham, let me say the reported remarks, which I understand have been denied, the reported remarks are not sentiments that have any place in our party.
Robert Adley!
Is my right honourable friend aware that the railway branch line to Henley-on-Thames remains intact? Would he recognise...
Close it! Close it now!
Would he recognise that if more decisions of this nature had been taken by British Rail over the last few years, and less decisions taken following the disastrous Beeching report, many more of our fellow citizens would today have the opportunity to travel by train, which is denied them by the closures of recent years?
I was aware of the excellent service from Henley. My right honourable friend reports to me regularly on it.
Mr. Eric Ilslip!
Of course, sir.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the reply I gave some moments ago.
Ilsley.
Is the Prime Minister aware that in certain areas, and in particular Sheffield, general practitioners have been prevented from prescribing certain drugs to patients, in particular young children? And will the Prime Minister, without rattling out the old figures as to how many patients are being treated under the NHS at the present time, tell this House... Will he tell this House whether under his government we are going to see patients, and in particular young children, denied medication and treatment which they need?
I will tell the honourable gentleman this. I will tell the honourable gentleman this, that the District Health Authority in his area has substantially more cash than in previous years, that the treatment of inpatients of outpatients has risen, and that both the quantum and the quality of health treatment rises yearly.
Mr. John Brown!
Right honourable friend accept that one group of our citizens who should not be subjected to the community charge are British hostages in the Gulf. Would he please agree to issue an advice to that effect, or even a directive under primary legislation, so that uncertainty, anxiety and anger can be removed?
I think my honourable friend will find we have already sent such advice to local authorities.
Mr. Bob Perry. Perry. Mr. Keith Fairs.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the reply I gave some moments ago.
Mr. Fairs.
Would the Prime Minister reflect on the case of my constituent John Hall, who is dying of leukemia, a disease that he contracted while working on Christmas Island? Would he, as one of the first acts of his new administration, reverse the government's policy and, in compassion, humanity and justice, provide John Hall and the other nuclear test veterans with the compensation which this House and the country believe they so richly deserve?
I will examine this particular matter, the honourable gentleman says. I'm not familiar with the particular details of his constituent. I will discuss it and examine it.
Mrs. Edwina Curry.
Would the Prime Minister agree that today's performances demonstrate that both the main parties have got both the leaders and the policies for the next election, us to win and them to lose?
I am grateful.
Order!
I am grateful to my honourable friend. It is not for me to reply for the right honourable gentleman, but if he ever needs a campaign team, I'll lend him mine.
Merlin Rees!
The Prime Minister will recall that in the Queen's speech, it promised that a bill would be brought before our courts to bring the jurisdiction, to give jurisdiction to try alleged war criminals. Does that still stand?
That bill is in the government's programme and it will be presented to the House of Commons. There will be amendments to the bill that the House will wish to examine.
Mr. Robert Rose James.
Can I ask my right honourable friend that those of us of a particular generation remember the time when the Russian people and our people were together, and when Mrs. Churchill was leading the campaign to support the Russian people. And in the present circumstances, will not only the government, but the people of this country respond as they did during the war?
I think there is very considerable concern in this country over the particular difficulties faced by the Russian people and by President Gorbachev. And I think also there is a great warmth in this country for the changes that have been brought about in the Soviet Union under Mr. Gorbachev's presidency. I think that feeling extends not only in this House, but throughout the European community, and I have no doubt that is one of many matters that will be discussed at community level in forthcoming meetings.